So good morning all. As sir has already introduced me, so I'm working as an assistant professor in SUNIT. So today I will take a lecture on powder based 3D printing processes. So this is actually a very important currently very much focused topic in manufacturing. That is a powder based technology for additive manufacturing. So let us start the topic now. So first of all, let us know, a brief introduction to what actually is 3D printing, or in a broader terminology, we call it as additive manufacturing, more comprehensive and a more detailed. So we call it as additive manufacturing. So additive manufacturing or 3D printing is nothing but a process of adding materials, layer by layer. That material can be in the form of solid, it can be in the form of liquid, resin, or powder. Okay, so we join it layer by layer to form a three-dimensional object. So how process chain it follow is it initiated in 3D printing. In fact, it started with rapid prototyping. This process chain is actually it was reported for rapid prototyping, but with the evolution of different technologies, now we are we are calling it as 3D printing or additive manufacturing, because previously the technology was developed only for prototyping purpose, but with the evolution of newer techniques, we shifted from prototyping only to manufacturing, direct manufacturing also. So the process chain, it initiates with the development of a CAD model, and then we go for, after we have a CAD model, so there are different ways, so I will discuss that in my subsequent slide. There are different ways to achieve this CAD model, and this at this point, it is where the advantage of 3D printing lies. CAD model, so we can design our part initially, and we can print that part as per the design that we have developed. Okay, so now we are actually combining designing and manufacturing together with the help of 3D printing. So then we go for tessellation. Tessellation is nothing but a piecewise linear approximation of a developed CAD model. So we because we need a mathematical data to print our part, so we need to have some mathematical output of from the CAD model. So we do tessellations so that we can generate that mathematical data. So we approximate the model that we have developed, and then we go for slicing. Slicing is getting the layer by layer information using the developed tessellated model. So because as 3D printing is layer by layer manufacturing technique, so we need to develop this slice, and then we go for tool path generation. It can be laser movement in case of laser based technology, or nozzle movement in case of polymer based like FDM techniques. So tool path generation. So what we do in 3D printing, we start with 3D model, then we move for approximation of this 3D model, then we generate some 2D layers. So we are having the information of 2D layers. Then once we have the information of 2D layers, we go for one-dimensional tool path generation. That means we have now through proper mathematical algorithms, we get the information of each step, each point of that model, and then we go for RP systems. That can be any system for printing, and then post processing, which is very crucial in various 3D printing techniques. Okay, so we go for post processing of the part, and then we test our prototype, and if it was found okay, then we go for further, and otherwise we just we will again start the process again. Okay, so this, as I've told you, it was developed for prototyping, but now we are not only using this as a prototyping, but we are talking about direct manufacturing also. Okay, so we have we have gone further in this direction. Now, as I've told you, the first step or the key step in additive manufacturing or 3D printing is the generation of CAD model. So CAD model generation, or how the data flow it occurs in 3D printing. So let us understand that. So that CAD model can be generated by using direct softwares like CAD, SolidWorks, Creo. We can directly develop the CAD model, 3D CAD model. Other ways, or very advanced ways, which actually makes 3D printing a very very much important or advantageous as compared to other manufacturing technique, is using reverse engineering for development of CAD model, where we can use scanning methods, 3D scanning techniques, and using these 3D scanning techniques, we can develop point cloud data, and point cloud data can be used for development of the CAD model. So whatever end product, So now we are using the AND application or the AND product, and we are now developing the CAD model using that AND product. So we are having a 3D model. Similarly, we extend the application reverse engineering into biomedical field. We can use that using the MRI or CT scan data. We can develop a 3D reconstruction model. So we can use softwares like Mimics, which is very popular for this application, where we can develop a reconstructed CAD model. And after we have the 3D CAD model, we go for STL file generation, and there can be other format like SLC. This is actually SLC. So stereolithographic contour or CLI. These are other different formats. Then after we have the STL file, we go for geometrical data. Okay, so like auxiliary supports, support structure. These are very important in 3D printing. Then we go for specification of machine layer information like process parameters, machine parameters. We input those things, and then now we are having a machine data set with us. So the purpose of showing this slide is now because I will be discussing some powder based techniques. In fact, in all the 3D printing techniques, we need this data set. We need this data set in all 3D printing techniques. And the research, if I talk about the research part, you can do this. People are working on this. People are working on development of new file formats. They are working on support structures, okay, optimization, machine parameter optimization. Okay, so this is complete, the complete portfolio, complete profile of a 3D printing technique. So classification of 3D printing techniques, as I've told you, they are classified based on the material which we use. So if we are using a liquid based material, then stereolithography is actually the first of its kind 3D printing technique, or the RP technique which was developed. Then jetting technique, direct light processing, bioprinting. Then there are powder based techniques like SLS, electron beam melting, selective laser melting. So in my today's lecture, I will be discussing these techniques. Then we are having solid based techniques also where the material that we are using is in the form of solid wires or sheets. Like fused deposition modeling, we use wire or spools, and laminated object management, we use sheets. So these are the classification. So now I will start my topic on powder based techniques. And the most popular powder based technique which was developed is actually selective laser sintering or melting. So we will see what are the difference. So if we'll start, so what is the, we'll divide these words. So selective laser sintering. Selective means we will selective location, we will identify and we will focus our laser beam. So selectively laser is focused on the powder, and hence we get we achieve sintering mechanism, or sintering is performed on the location, selective location where laser beam is focused. In any 3D printing process, if we'll talk about in any 3D printing technique, there are two major parts. One is achieving the XYZ motion. Okay, to get how we can get the X, Y, and Z motion, that is a 3-dimensional motion. Okay, using the build platform, all those things. Second most important thing is fusion mechanism. How we can develop, or we can identify what will be the fusion mechanism. It is this fusion mechanism because of which we are talking about newer techniques now, and we are developing. So you can develop a new techniques if you can use some conventional fusion techniques, like sintering is a conventional technique, but that sintering techniques we have used it for 3D printing purpose, and is selective laser sintering. Actually, it is this technique after which the shift from RP or rapid prototyping to rapid manufacturing occurred. Okay, because people were thinking of started directly manufacturing the parts. So selective laser manufacturing sintering is a layer manufacturing techniques. Again, it allows complex 3D part manufacturing by successive layer fabrication of powder material. So we are having a powder material and we place it one over another. It was developed by University of Texas. Okay, so originally it was developed for plastic parts fabrication only, but later it has been evolved, and now we are using it for metal also. So how it works? So selective laser sintering, if you see here, this is the powder feed cartridges, where the powder, it can be plastic. Okay, if you are using SLS, it can be metal also. So the powder is filled in these cartridges. Then this is the build envelope. This is the laser focusing arrangement from where the laser is focused onto the bag. So, and this is the working bag. And then there is a powder feed roller. So if we'll talk, you will see the 2D diagram schematic of it. So you can see this is the cartridge. So the powder, this powder with the help of a roller, this powder is spread uniformly on the top of this bag, and at the same time laser beam is focused. That selectively it will move in XY motion, and after it will move, like here it has printed this layer. So this layer has been printed. So after this layer has been printed, the build envelope will go in the downward direction, and the next layer of unsintered powder will be distributed onto the build envelope. So you can see after each, the XYZ motion here is achieved by, XY is achieved by laser movement, and Z by moving the build platform in the downward direction. And then after each layer is printed, the powder is uniformly spread onto the bag surface, and hence the sintering will occur. So this is the basic working principle of selective laser sintering. So as a laser is focused onto the powder, what happens? The particles get sintered, and there can be different mechanisms of bonding that we can achieve, that I will be discussing in my coming slide. Okay, so loose powders. So important thing here to understand is that the point where the laser is focused, it will sinter, and there the other powder parts, like if we are sintering only this portion, the other powder will remain unsintered. Okay, so this unsintered powder which we are having, it will act as a support structure. Support structure is a key requirement in 3D printing. Like in FDM machine, in SLA, we need support structure. Like for example, if we are having this kind of a part, overhanging part, okay, so if you're printing it layer by layer, after some point, this portion, if we are starting with this portion is overhanging, so there is a possibility that during printing it may fall down, or it may bend down due to its own weight, okay, during the printing. So therefore, to avoid various defects, we give support. Support means like a tree we give, okay, and this to support this during printing. So support structure is a very key requirement, but this support is nothing but we need some extra material, and we need to remove it, which affect its surface finish also. But in case of SLS technique, the unsintered powder which was present, it will remain, okay, it will act as a support material. So we don't need any external support in case of SLS or SLM technique. So if we talk about a sintering mechanism, then it is known as selective laser sintering, and if we are talking about of melting of the powder, then it is known as selective laser melting. So this is already I've discussed, okay, the basic mechanism. So what are the different binding mechanisms in SLS or SLM technique? So the binding mechanism can be a solid state sintering, okay, like just like two powder, they comes in contact, the diffusion will occur, so solid state sintering will occur. Then it can be chemical induced binding. Then binding mechanism can be liquid phase sintering or partial melting. They are further classified into different binders and structural material, okay, like different binding arrangement that we're using. Then we can also use full melting, okay. It can be either single melting, single component, or we can go for multi-component melting also, so that we can develop some alloying arrangement, alloying also during sintering. So these are the basic binding mechanisms. So let us discuss them one by one. First one is solid state sintering. So solid state sintering, it is, I hope all of you know what is powder metallurgy. So in powder metallurgy, we talk about sintering mechanism. In sintering, we heat the material below its melting temperature. Generally, it is around, there's no fixed value to it, but general experiments showed that it is around 80% of the melting point of the material, but it can be lower than that also. We need to understand the phase diagrams. We need to understand the, different diffusion mechanisms of the powders. So what happens when two powders, so it is idealistic case that we are using spherical stainless steel powder. So this is the diagram that I've taken from a reported work. So as the powder comes in contact, the diffusion will occur, okay. So the diffusion will occur, and hence the neck formation will occur. So you can see this is the neck that has been formed here also. So the bonding will occur, okay. So this bonding between two powders, it will be affected by the diffusion mechanism that is occurring. That diffusion can be grain boundary. It can be, generally vapor transport is generally used in liquid phase. So it is mostly grain boundary and mass transport mechanism. And there are different, concept which has been used. Like there's a, generally diffusion occurs when there is a high concentration zone and there's a low concentration zone. So when you're heating the powder, when the laser is focused, so that concentration gradient it occurs, and therefore the particle gets diffused into each other. So this is one way of achieving the binding between the particle, that is using solid state sintering. Another one is chemical induced binding. In chemical induced binding, we can use some chemical reaction and use and that the product out of those reaction can be used as a binding agent. Like for example, when heating silicon carbide particle to a very high temperature because of the laser focus, partial disintegration of silicon carbide occurs into silicon and carbide, and the free silicon, it forms silicon dioxide, which act as a binding agent between silicon carbide particle. So we can use such mechanisms where we can due to the thermal energy, disintegration of the compounds occurs, and due to this disintegration, a new compound which act as a binding agent will be used. Similar techniques has been used, for other ceramic combination like aluminum oxides and zirconium silicon and O4. So there is different combinations that we can use. So this is chemical induced binding. It has been developed by Fraunhofer institutes and has been very much researched there also. So these are the examples of the products formed using chemical induced binding. Then liquid phase sintering or partial melting. Okay, so here we are not completely melting the material, rather we are using some other material which is having low melting temperature. For example, there's a diagram showing the combination of stainless steel and copper. So the melting temperature of stainless steel is close to 1600 degrees centigrade, and or that of copper is close to 1100 degrees centigrade. So the copper will melt early as compared to stainless steel. So what happens, as the copper, as the laser is focused, and if we let us say we are achieving the temperature close to 1100 degrees centigrade or more than that, so that the copper will melt. So the copper that is which gets melted, it due to the wetting properties of copper, it will wet the surface of the stainless steel powder and will move due to the capillary action through the cavities. So the copper will act as a binding agent in case of partial melting tech. So why we are actually going for partial melting? Like in solid state sintering, we have seen one example of neck formation. Okay, we have already discussed that. So if you see there, if you are using spherical particles and if you are bonding them, the chances of porosity, or actually it is the biggest limitation of selective laser sintering also, porosity chances are very much higher, the gaps, because in diffusion also there comes a stage. I will show you in my some few last slides that the complete densification is actually indicated by the isolated pore formation. So some isolated pores are formed which act as a pores, and hence the mechanical strength is inferior as compared to the fully dense material. Okay, so hence to overcome that limitation, we can go for partial melting so that the gaps are filled with respect to the external or the other element. So here you can see A is the non-molten steel particles. So these are steel particles, and then you can see copper is indicated by B. So these are B. You can see here. These are the capillary due to the wetted copper, which is melted copper, which has moved along to the cavities. And here also C indicates porosity. So the porosity still remains because it may not go to each and every gap, or other limitations are also there. So this is liquid phase sintering or partial melting. Okay, so actually systematically we are moving ahead from sintering to partial melting. Then we start using full melting. Okay, why not fully melt the powders? So here we are now started using the terminology selective laser melting also, and therefore this technology is very much used in metal fabrication also. So to in case of full melting, we are completely melting the powders, and hence due to the those powders are joined, and the chances of porosity generation is very less in case of fully melting zone, because we are actually achieving nearly fully dense product. So this is about full melting. So so there are different problems also, in full melting that we go for, like the problem of balling. Balling effect is very much there, which is spheroidization of the melt will spheroidize, it will form a ball kind of a bulk, and it will be it will be on the powder bed at one location. More balling will occur, and hence it affects the strength of the product. So this balling effect is a problem. So we can overcome this by making suitable changes in the parameters, preheating, and all those things. We can overcome that limitation. So we have discussed different types of binding mechanisms in case of SLS. That is, first one is solid state sintering, then chemical induced binding, then we studied partial melting, and then fully melting. So what are the process parameters in case of SLS or SLM? These are laser parameters, that is the laser power, spot size, pulse duration, frequency. All of them significantly affect the performance of the product that we are fabricating. Then powder characteristics, which are very important in almost all the powder based techniques. That is the size of the powder, shape of the powder. Like if you are using a random shape powder like this, and if you're using a spherical shape powder, so the sintering mechanism is completely different for same material. If you are using stainless steel random shape powder, and if you're using stainless steel spherical shape powder will have more surface energy, and hence which is will be easily sintered as compared to random shape powder. Okay, so these are the for same material, with the powder shape and size also plays a significant role. Size, distribution, and packing density also. There are flowability properties. So there are different properties which are very important. Then scan parameters, which are almost important in all the 3D printing techniques, like layer thickness. So the smaller the layer thickness is, the better surface finish we can achieve. Okay, but the problem is the time will be higher. Scan spacing and travel speed, how it is spacing. So there's a important terminology in SLS, that is a hatch spacing. Hatch spacing is the distance between the center of the two successive powder. So this is the hatch spacing. So you can reduce it, you can increase it. If you increase it, there may be chances of more porosity or gaps. If you reduce it, the overlapping of the powder will occur. Maybe you may not, there may be some other troubles like balling and all those things. So hatch spacing again a significant parameter. And then temperature related properties like powder bed temperature and chamber. So powder bed, we preheat the powder bed so that the residual stresses generation are lowered, and also the powder which is preheated, it will be sintered easily. Also chamber temperature. So the chamber temperature and the atmosphere, like inert gas atmosphere, is also very much important in case of SLS or SLM techniques. So what are the advantages? Good part stability, wide range of processing material. We can process polymers as well as metals. Also ceramics we can process in this using these techniques. No part supports are required. This is the biggest advantage of SLS or SLM technique, that we don't want and don't require any support structure. So it not only reduces the material requirement, it also reduces the time and also the accuracy of the part. Little post processing required because support structure requirement has been reduced. So hence again time is reduced. And no post curing, like in case of stereolithography we use liquid resin, so we need some post curing. So we don't require that in case of SLS or SLM. Limitation: large physical size of the unit. The size of we need laser power generation source, and because the laser here is used as a power source. Also high power consumption, it can rise as high as to 2 kilowatts. Okay, poor surface finish because of the powders which is getting binded, so the surface finish is poor. So, and also the cost of the machine, if I talk about other techniques, the cost is also very high. Okay, so next type of powder based techniques is electron beam melting. So we have seen selective laser melting, where we are selectively focusing the laser beam to achieve the complete melting, full melting of the metal powders. Now instead of laser beam, if we are using electron beam, so that technique is known as electron beam melting. So why we are using electron beam? The purpose is to process high melting temperature materials like titanium, okay, like other alloys, which are used very much in aerospace and various other applications. So high melting temperature alloys, to process them, so laser power, may not be enough, or we cannot achieve complete densification. So we use electron beam melting in such cases. So in electron beam melting, the mechanism is like there is a filament from where the electrons are released, and then there is an anodic arrangement which will focus it. Then we use magnetic lenses or electromagnetic lenses. Here this is a focus coil which will focus it, and then there is a deflection coil, and using these electromagnetic lenses we focus the electron beam onto the part surface. Other mechanism is quite similar to SLM, only difference is electron beam that we are focusing. Okay, and also one more biggest difference is that this complete process will occur only in an inert atmosphere. Okay, so because otherwise air, with the air molecules, the electrons will interact and it will be deflected or disturbed. So we always perform this operation in inert atmosphere, or vacuum we perform it. Okay, in vacuum to perform this arrangement. So complete vacuum requirement is very much important, necessary for electron beam melting. So it is a fully melting 3D printing process where we are using a high energy beam for densification of the part. So this is the full phases in case of electron beam process. So first is stable lowering, then layer deposition, okay, of the powder, then raking, so that uniformly the powder is distributed, then preheating, which is a key step in EBM. Preheating is done using the unfocused electron beams, and then after preheating, selectively electron beam will be focused, and hence the part will be fabricated. So we are using an AM, we are fabricating an AM here, so we are getting this fabricated part. So these are the steps in case of EBM process. So the working principle of EBM is that when the electrons at very high, hit the powder particles, they possess very high kinetic energy, and this kinetic energy, as soon as they strikes the powder, the material, it gets converted into thermal energy, and this thermal energy is sufficient enough to melt, sinter, heat, and vaporize the material. Okay, so the electrons between the electron beam powder, it occurs there are four main effects that are involved. That is the spread of the particles, sintering of the particles, melting of the particles, and evaporation of some alloying elements. So these are the four things which occurs mainly. You can see here, which are shown here, different mechanisms that are occurring. So there's a biggest problem, or in case of biggest limitation, if you are not preheating our powder in EBM, and through experiment it was found that there is a spreading mechanism that occurs, spreading of powder which occurs. Okay, why this occurs? You can see at 5 milliseconds if the laser beam is focused. So when you are increasing the time the laser beam is focused, due to the kinetic energy of the electron beam, the powder are in loose forms. So as soon as the electron strikes the powder bed surface, some of the powders, they will be spread out, okay, due to the impact of the electron beams. So you can see this is a spreading which is occurring. So if this spreading, you can see it as so vulnerable it is getting when you increase the time, because more interaction will occur. So this spreading is the biggest problem in case of EBM process, and hence it affects the accuracy of the part and sintering, because the powder, uniformly distributed powder will be spread out from its own parent location, and hence there may be some gaps or crack due to that. Okay, so to overcome this problem, preheating is done in case of EBM, which is a key step. So in preheating, you can see we using the unfocused electron beams, which are not having that high intensity, we preheat our powder. So due to that preheating, initial bonding will occur, a small initial bond. You can see this is the bond which has been formed. So due to this initial bonding, now the powder are supporting each other. So as soon as the electron beam strikes the surface, there will be no spread. Okay, the spread, because the powders are there is a contact, there is a bond between the powder, small bond, which will ignore or which will prevent the spreading out of the powder. So you can see this is the effect of preheating in case of EBM process. So process parameters in EBM, they include acceleration voltage, intensity of the beam current, focus offset, which is related to the electron beam using the electromagnetic lenses. Okay, so this is a focus offset, because this is using this focus offset also we do preheating as well as selective melting. Then layer thickness, like just like other 3D printing techniques, scanning strategies and scanning modes, how we are scanning, how we are, the tool is, the electron beam is moving onto the part surface. It is also very important because it can be used for preheating also, this scanning strategies or tool path generation. Then beam power and spot size and preheating. So these are the critical process parameters in case of EBM techniques. Advantages of EBM: we can fabricate complex structure, accuracy is very good. Okay, support structure requirement is very minimum, and we can, this is the biggest advantage of EBM, that it is capable of processing metals having high melting temperatures. Limitation is very expensive. Okay, part size limit, because we need a vacuum chamber and all those things. So, and also fewer material options are there with EBM. And processing time is also higher in EBM as compared to laser based techniques, because we need to first do the complete achieve the vacuum environment, then we go for printing, and then the part removal from the bed and all those, because circuit needs to be completed. Okay, so we need, the part has to be in contact with the working bed, all so all these steps, it increases the processing times in case of EBM technique. Next types of powder based techniques are binder jet or inkjet 3D printing techniques. So this, it is after this techniques only, the development of this technique, that terminology 3D printing has been coined. Okay, because this is the next, this is the advancement of the conventional 2D printing that we use in our home printers. Okay, so wherein we are using an inkjet head, so here we are using a binder jet head. Okay, from where the binder jet will be dropped. Other thing, I have told you initially that the fusion mechanism, it is what makes the technologies different. Okay, so XYZ motion we are achieving for using laser in case of laser based techniques, electron beam in case of electron beam. Now we are using inkjet head or binder jet head. Okay, for achieving the bonding between the particles. So this binder will be selectively dropped onto the surface of the bed, which is uniformly distributed, and hence it will be lowered. So the location where the binder has been deposited, it will bind, it will be joined those particles, and hence we can achieve 3D binder jet printing. Okay, again, it was developed, invented at MIT. So this is the schematic of binder jet printing technique. So if you talk about working principle, the roller will spread out the powder uniformly, distribute the powder uniformly, and then the jet or binder will be deposited selectively on the part, and the point where the jet is deposited, it will be joined. We may require subsequent burned out, okay, of the binder that we are using in various application, or we can use it as it is. Okay, so it depends on the application that we are using, the strength requirement that we require. Okay, so this technique is also known as drop on powder process also, because droplet as per the requirement is dropped. So this is the main mechanism, selective joining using a binder. So this is the mechanism of joining in case of binder jet or inkjet 3D printing technique. So you can see the same image here. First is the green and without curing. So this is the green powder, and this is the magnified image. So you can see in between this, the binder is there between the particle. Due to this binder, the particles are bonded. Okay, so this is it is not, there's no burned out, only the green and without curing step is there. And then if you go and burn out this particle, what will happen? This binder will be burned out, and subsequent sintering will be occurred. You can see the bonding occurring between the powders. You can see the magnified image of it. So this is the steps in inkjet or binder jet printing technique. And this techniques can be used for polymer as well as metal, if you can use have different binders. So what are the process parameters in case of binder jet or inkjet 3D printing techniques? Those process parameters can be powder related, like particle packing, spreading of the powder. Okay, so powder packing is a key step in case of other techniques also, but here it is again very important, because we need the binder to go inside in between the gaps of the particles. So powder packing, the spreading of the powder, therefore the spreading of mechanism or distribution of the powder is very important. So if the particle size is very small, it is very difficult to spread it uniformly. Okay, but if the particle size is large enough or optimum, so we can easily spread the powder uniformly onto the bed. and hence we can achieve more compact, more packing we can achieve, because if it is uniformly distributed. Then powder flowability. Again, it is an important factor because it allows the uniform distribution of the powder layer onto the working bed. Okay, so because a thin layer of powder, it will be spread out, and if it is uniformly distributed, then it will allow for better strength, better printing, or better accuracy. So powder flowability is a key parameter in case of binder jet printing. Then powder wettability. Wettability is the property wherein the binder should be able to completely wet the surface. So if this is the particle, so if the binder is coming, so it should have ability to completely wet the surface of the particle. Okay, there are properties. It should have good, hydrophilic properties based on compared for the specific material that we are using. Okay, so the resolution of printing, again, it is if it is able to wet the powder bed appropriately, so we can achieve good resolutions in printing. So we can go for fine jets, fine droplets also, so that will increase the accuracy. The parameters related to binder, they are mainly related to the rheology. So the resolution is strongly dependent on the binder droplet size. So if the droplet size is very small, higher resolution can be achieved, because again, it's just like we are using a small laser spot as compared to larger laser spots. Similar thing is here also, but if the resolution, we can use fine droplets only when the wettability properties and the uniform powder packing is achieved. Otherwise, the droplet may not go to all the free spaces, and the bonding may not occur. So the resolution will increase, accuracy will increase. So the properties which are important are surface tension and viscosity of the binder. Okay, so the binder viscosity should be appropriate enough, optimum enough, so that it can move easily along the gaps. Another important property is printing saturation. It is the ratio of volume of binder to the volume of the air. Okay, in terms of percentage. So how much the binder has gone into the gaps. So if the binder is entered into the gaps, so the air will not be there. But if there are free spaces, so how much saturation you have achieved, that is a printing saturation. Okay, so higher the printing saturation, higher the bonding strength using the binder you can achieve. Okay, so this is again an important criteria. And device related are layer thickness. Obviously, this is almost important in all the 3D printing techniques. Build orientation. Build orientation is, part orientation is again a key aspect in various 3D printing techniques. Like how we can, orient our part during printing. We can fabric, because we can reduce the support structure requirement. We can reduce the accuracy issues using the optimum part orientation during the 3D printing. In case of inkjet based techniques, build orientation is important because owing to the gravity effect, the binder will move. So we have to appropriately select the build orientation during the binder jet or inkjet 3D printing technique. So there can be different drop generation method, which are also important. It can be continuous inkjet printing, drop on demand, or electrostatic. So these are three modes. So what are these? So if you can see, these are drop on demand, where we are using a heating arrangement. So if you use a heater, a vapor bubble will be generated, and due to this vapor bubble, it will force out pressure. It will apply the pressure on the binding agent, and it will come out in the form of drop by drop. These we are using piezoelectric actuators. So again, this piezoelectric actuator will just like an injection that we use in our day-to-day life. Okay, if you're pressing it, the droplet will come out from the nozzle. Then there can be continuous modes also, wherein we are using electrostatic forces to which will attract the binders, and will come continuously and will be spread out onto the surface. So these are the two different types of drop generation method that are most commonly used for in inkjet 3D printing techniques. So what are the advantages of inkjet 3D printing process? These are fast process. We don't require any powerful source of energy like laser or electron beam, so the power consumption is very low. Defect, we can eliminate the defect. And parts in color, we can fabricate color parts, having different colors, we easily using this technique. This is important, when we are from the aesthetic point of view also, and also if we are going for some analysis, so we can take out the image of the analysis part, simulated part, and we can fabricate, print it, and then we can analyze it or visualize it. The biggest limitation of inkjet 3D printing techniques is significant part shrinkage, because you have seen there is a binder which will enter between the gaps, and then you subsequently burn out that binder. So if that binder is burned out, the gaps in the gap in which the binder is there, due to the diffusion between the particle and the mass transport between the particle, there will be significant shrinkage, and that shrinkage is very high, and we need to overcome that limitation. So this is the biggest limitation of binder jet or inkjet printing. The density is lower because the gaps will remain. Okay, you have seen in the same image also, even if you have completely burned out the process, you have sintered it, just like in solid state sintering, we have discussed in SLS, that there will be some porosity. So mechanical strength of these parts are lower, so people are working on it. And binder jet combination is also binder for specific material. It is also very much important. So this is about inkjet 3D printing technique. Next is laser engineered net shaping, that is lens. So in case of SLM techniques that we have discussed, we have seen SLM. In SLM, there's the biggest limitation in all the other techniques also, that we need to uniformly spread the powder on the powder bed, and for that we need to have the specific properties in powders like flowability, packing, all these properties. And after each layer is printed, the roller will come, it will spread the powder on the working bed, and then the laser will selectively melt it or sinter it. But sometimes due to the moisture, due to the lower size of the powder, we cannot achieve the complete uniform spreading or the distribution of the powder on the working bed. And also it is a time taking consuming step. After each layer, the roller has to move, so it takes time. So it adds to the productivity issues with the previously discussed processes. Hence, to overcome these limitations and to fabricate high melting temperature alloys also, a new technique has been developed which is very popular nowadays, that is lens. So this is laser engineered net shaping. Here we are having a nozzle. This is a nozzle assembly which is specifically designed for this process. So from this point, from this entry, the powder will enter. Then from this point, the shielding gas will enter, and the laser will come from the center. So you can see the powders are coming from both the side, from the nozzle, and the shielding gas is there. So as soon as the powder comes in contact with the laser beam, it will be melted, and hence subsequently it will be deposited onto the substrate. So just like in fused deposition modeling, we deposit polymers, in lens we are depositing molten material onto the substrate surface, and this molten material is achieved through the movement of the powder, and as the powder comes in contact with the lens or laser beam, it is deposited subsequently. Now people are working on different sources of energy also. Like here we are only talking about the laser beam, but you can use welding sources also, like TIG, tungsten inert gas, metal inert gas, plasma arc. So welding techniques are also used, so these processes are actually known as direct energy deposition techniques. Okay, so here powder streams, it comes in contact, and the shielding gas will protect the oxidation of the molten material, and it will result in a better strength of the particle. So inert gas is very much required in almost all the lens processes. Advantages of lens. So the biggest advantage is that you can see there are two nozzles which are coming. So we can achieve alloying of the material during the printing also, and also we can fabricate metal matrix composite during printing using this technique. So first advantage is it is capable of fabric processing wide range of material, high melting alloys. Okay, so we can melt it, and we can deposit it. So we can process wide range of materials. Then metal matrix composites can be fabricated. Material wastage is very low. Another biggest advantage of lens is in previous cases The unsintered powder, though it will act as a support material, but in some of the cases that unsintered powder, due to the thermal damages, it may not be reused again. Okay, so that powder will remain waste. Wastage of powder is very much there, because you need to clean the parts, and then some of the powder will be wasted in that process. So powder, and we are talking about some metal powders like titanium alloys, okay, which are very costly. Okay, so and which are very much used in aerospace and biomedical application. So to overcome that limitation, lens is again very much crucial, because we are using the powder, and powder wastage is very low in case of lens process. Large working envelope. So we are talking about the working envelope in lens, in EBM. There are limitations that in case of laser beam techniques, selective laser, SLS and EBM, there's a limitation of the bed size. Okay, especially in case of EBM, because in EBM we need to achieve the vacuum environment, and hence the bed size is limited. But here we can, larger bed size we can process. So this is again, it is capable of producing functionally graded part, that is part where layers are of different materials. So functionally graded materials have properties of having functionally graded properties, can be fabricated easily. Then it can be used for near complex fabrication. So this is again, then time and machining cost saving is there. Okay, because the spreading of the powder step and all those has been eliminated. But there are certain critical limitations of this process also. One is we need support structure in this part, because we are depositing molten material. So we don't have any unsintered powder. So we need support structure. And that support structure is obviously will be of metal. So that support structure, removal of support structure is a difficult task in case of lens process. Okay, and researchers are working on reducing this limitation. Okay, but this is the biggest limitation of lens, the support structures. Okay, because it requires post machining. We need to machine out the support structures, and it is a time taking task. So it now reduces the some of the big advantages of lens support structure. So these are all the technologies that I've discussed till now are the direct manufacturing techniques. Now all the techniques that we have seen, the most metal 3D printing techniques like SLM, electron beam, lens, they suffer from certain limitation like high capital cost, lack of compatible working materials, and difficulty in support structure removal. So therefore, to overcome these limitations, researchers have developed rapid tooling techniques. Rapid tooling means wherein we can use a combination of polymer based 3D printing like FDM, polymer based 3D printing, plus conventional manufacturing techniques. Conventional manufacturing techniques can be casting, sintering. Okay, so we can use these conventional techniques, and we add. So using polymer based 3D printing techniques, we can achieve flexibility in design. Flexibility in design can be achieved. Okay, and using obviously conventional techniques, we can achieve strength. We can impart strength to the part. So these are rapid tooling techniques. Why they are known as rapid tooling? The rapid word came from the rapid prototyping technique, because we are using polymer based technique. Tooling is they were designed to fabricate tools for mechanical engineering, like injection molding dies, dies for different applications. Okay, so they are used specifically designed for tool generation. We can in fact use them for point cutting tools also, having conformal cooling channels. So these are therefore they are known as rapid tooling, but it is not limited to only tool fabrication. Now, like I have used it for different applications. So these processes are termed as rapid tooling. So this is the technique developed by me, and I've just now in the last month only I've received the patent for this also. So this technique is a 7-step methodology wherein this is the CAD. It initiates with the CAD model development. Then this is the 3D printing using SLA technique. So I've choose a metal foam because this is a complex shape. Okay, so this is a foam structure, 3D printed template. Then we can use some specifically developed investment powders. So you can see the mold with the template. Then the burnout will occur. So you can see the cavity. Then under ultrasonic vibrations, the particles. So I use carbonyl iron particles. They will be filled inside the cavity. And then this is the novel aspect of this technology. I use pressureless microwave sintering. Okay. So I use, first of all, microwave itself is a very, current uh, technique in sintering. And in that also I used pressureless sintering, because in generally in powder metallurgy, it initiate with compaction followed by sintering. But if we do compaction, we need some dyes, and therefore we cannot fabricate complex shapes like a metal foam if we are using a dye. So I developed a specifically pressureless microwave sintering process techniques, and you can see this is the final part fabrication. So this is a metal part that has been fabricated. You can compare it. The comparison I have also done. So this technology hardly cost us around 12 or 15 lakhs. Okay, if I talk about the complete machines that we have used. Okay, so it is very low cost as compared to the direct metal techniques like SLM, SLS that we have discussed. So this is a sintering mechanism. You can see this is the initial step at around 600 degrees centigrade. Now, as we are increasing the temperature, the bonding between the particle, it is occurring. You can see the bonding occurring, and the closed sphere formation is occurring. So as we have further increased, you can see this is the isolated pores or closed spheres. These are the indications of full densification in the parts. Okay, so if you go read out some sintering books, okay, good sintering books, they will say that full densification is how we can identify it by we see closed sphere. So the presence of closed sphere here indicates the full densification. You can see the bonding between the particle has been achieved successfully, though there are some gaps. Okay, so to test the efficacy of this technology, we performed some case studies. So this is a case study on customized human scaffold. So this is the case study wherein there is a skull. There's a patient who encountered with an accident, and there is a missing portion in the skull. So it came us through AIIMS. So what we did is we did reverse engineering. We used Mimics software. I used Mimics, and this is the design of the scaffold that was required. And you can see successfully it has been printed or developed using the developed technology. And we have compared using the IT grades, and it was very much in the medical IT grades as prescribed for the purpose. Okay. Then the previous case study was to test the customization aspect of the technology. Next is to test the complexity of the technology. So to test the complexity, I've done choose 3 different designs of unit cells in metal foam, namely cubic, truncated octahedron, and pyramid. So you can see this is a very complex structure. It has been successfully fabricated using the developed methodology. You can see the accuracy or the complexity. You can see the edges. Successfully it has been fabricated using the developed technique. So this is again here also we are using powders, metal powders for fabricating the parts, and we can also process high melting temperature alloys or powders also using this technology. So this is about rapid tooling techniques. So next is how the powder characterization and what are the different standards for testing for powders in 3D printing. So different important characteristics of powders are shape, size distribution, surface morphology, composition, flowability, as we have already discussed. So what are the different techniques? So X-rays and CT computed tomography can be used to examine the shape. So we can also use SAM for this. Okay. To test the powder particle size, we can use sieve analysis as per ISO 4497. Also, the more comprehensive and more accurate technique is laser diffraction method as per this ISO 13320 standard, where we use laser to analyze the particle size. So it gives a uniform distribution of that. Flowability can be tested using Hall flow meter as per this standard. Okay, so this is by means of a calibrated funnel. Okay, there's a funnel, the particle will flow out. So as using the appropriate standard, we will measure the flowability of the powder. Apparent density is again tested using the funnel method using this standard 3923 ISO 3923. Then tap density, it is again a very important aspect. Okay, because using the tap density we can identify the powder compactability. Okay, if the powder can be compacted easily or not. Okay, so again it can be identified using Scott volumeter technique as per this ISO. So And also another technique is gas pycnometer with helium. These are used for tap density. So again, another technique to test the powder flowability, compressibility, and time is shear single ring shear cell tester as per this ASTM D6773. And then angle of repose can be tested as per these ISOs or ASTM B213, which are principle of the powder flow. It will come out from the funnel onto a plate, and the slope at which it is coming out, that is of cone, it will be measured. It is known as angle of repose, and it is actually a measure of powder flowability. Okay, powder flowability is a very important parameters in selectivism, sintering, melting, EBM, lens, and all those techniques. Because in lens also, the powder is coming out from the nozzle. So the flowability property is very much important. So we need to test whenever we go for such operations. We need to characterize our powder first, or we should procure the powder which has been already been tested for 3D printing techniques that I have already discussed. And if it has not been characterized, so these are the techniques that you may use for characterization of such powders. Now, the applications of powder-based 3D printing techniques in biomedical industry, you can see again an example of customized skull. So this is the biggest advantage. This is a customized, scaffold for human skull. Initially, what happens? Initially, in fact, currently also we are using standard size plates for these are the implants. So standard implant, what they will do, they will implant it like this. So there's a fixed size they will implant. Then they will put screws on the top of it. The density of our bone is around 1.8 gram per centimeter cube, but the density of the materials that we are using, like if we are using stainless steel, the density of stainless steel is close to 8 gram per centimeter cube. So it causes a lot of troubles in our bones. It causes bone infection, stress shielding effect is there. So one of the way to reduce the density is to make it porous. Okay. Another way is, we can only use the material in the location where it is actually required. Like in this case, the plate has been tight fitted into the location where it is desired. No excess material or metal has been used. Okay, so this can be achieved using powder-based 3D printing technique successfully. Okay, so again, application of chest implant, then titanium skull implant. So you can see these implants in aerospace industries. It is nowadays ISRO, NASA, in space industries, they are very much using EBM technique. Okay, because it is having number of advantages that the rocket nozzle and the various parts, they are using it. In fact, aeroplane industry, aerospace industry also, they are using EBM and SLM techniques for the part fabrication, because titanium alloy parts can be easily fabricated using these. So you see this is a 3D printed titanium bracket which has been shown. Again, hot air duct of an aero engine. It is 3D metal printed. This is the combustion chamber element which has been developed by SLM technique. Then application of powder-based technique in the fabrication of tools. I have discussed the example in rapid tooling also. There is a one terminology which is conformal cooling channel. If you see here, conformal cooling, which is very important in case of dyes. We use dyes in various types of, injection dye application, extrusion, various forming techniques, and also we use dyes in, we use cutting tools, like single point cutting tool. For example, if I need a single point cutting tool, okay, if I need to use this single point cutting tool for in the lathe operation, you all may be aware of it. Okay, if you belong to a mechanical stream, in single point cutting tool, the point will come, so we need to cool it down. So sometimes people use internal cooling channels to cool it. Okay, internal cooling channel where we can flow, liquid nitrogen. We can flow some coolant also. Now, if we use conformal means along the shape of the tool. Okay, we can achieve better heat transfer. You can see this is the shape. You can see it is along the periphery, taking into the consideration the strength issue. Okay. So this is the conformal cooling indicated by blue color, wherein the coolant will enter and will move. So better heat transfer, heat dissipation can be achieved if we use conformal cooling. And this is, this can be achieved. I cannot say it is impossible with the help of other techniques, but 3D printing is the only way to achieve this. Okay, if you're using a very precise techniques like laser beam machining, you can only develop a simple hole, straight hole, but you cannot achieve the conformal cooling channels or conformal holes in that case. Okay, so this is the biggest application of powder based 3D printing technique in the fabrication of conformal cooling tools. Again, these are the dies fabricated using different types of binder jet printing techniques. Okay, so thank you.